Get your dirty hands off her dress. Vanessa Whitmore screamed so loudly that the entire ballroom froze. Crystal glasses stopped moving. Violins went silent. Naomi Carter stood trembling beside the grand staircase, her faded catering uniform stained with champagne she did not spill. Then came the sound that shocked everyone. A sharp slap. Malcolm Hayes had just struck her across the face in front of 200 wealthy guests. Naomi nearly fell. Her old shoes scraped against the marble floor. A phone dropped from her shaking hand. The crowd gasped for 1 second. Then the whispers started. She touched Vanessa. These poor girls always want attention. Throw her out. Naomi held her burning cheek. Tears filled her eyes, but she did not scream. She only looked down, trying to hide the humiliation swallowing her alive. The ballroom glittered around her like another world. Gold chandeliers. Diamond necklaces. Black luxury suits. Expensive perfume floating through the air. And in the middle of it all stood Naomi. Thin. Exhausted. Deep brown skin shining under harsh lights. Her uniform sleeves worn at the edges. Her hands trembling from hunger and stress. In her pocket was a folded hospital bill she could not pay. Her mother was waiting for medicine tonight. But none of these people cared. Vanessa stepped closer in her silver designer gown. Cold smile. Perfect makeup. Cruel eyes. Girls like you should stay invisible, she said. You came here smelling like poverty. Laughter exploded from a group near the champagne tower. Someone raised a phone higher to record Naomi crying. Malcolm stood tall beside Vanessa. Billionaire CEO. Owner of Hayes Global. Deep black tuxedo. Powerful posture. Calm face. But his eyes remained hard. Did you ruin her dress? He asked. Naomi looked up fast. No, sir. I swear I did not touch her. Vanessa cut her off immediately. She is lying. Naomi's voice cracked. Please, my mother is in the hospital. I only came to work. Then work better, Vanessa snapped. Or beg outside where you belong. The crowd laughed again. Naomi's fingers tightened around her old bag. Inside it were medicine receipts, bus tickets, and the only photo she still had of her sick mother. A security guard started walking toward her. The humiliation became heavier. Hotter. Harder to breathe through. Then Naomi whispered something almost too soft to hear. Please do not fire me. That sentence changed nothing. Vanessa folded her arms. You should be grateful we even let you inside this mansion. Malcolm finally spoke again. Quiet. Controlled. Dangerous. Escort her out. Naomi's eyes widened instantly. Please, please do not do this. I need this job. Enough, Vanessa said sharply. Stop embarrassing yourself. Naomi lowered herself to her knees without thinking. The ballroom fell into an ugly silence. Even the violin players looked away. She held on to her old bag like it was the last thing keeping her together. My mother needs surgery, Naomi whispered through tears. Please let me stay tonight. For 1 second, one tiny second, an older woman near the dining tables looked uncomfortable. Another guest lowered her phone. A young waiter took one step toward Naomi like he wanted to help. Tiny hope. Then Vanessa destroyed it. Security. 2 guards grabbed Naomi by the arms. The crowd moved back to make room, like she was dirt being swept away. One woman laughed behind her wine glass. Poor people always bring drama. Naomi tried to pull away. I did not do anything. Malcolm's expression flickered slightly. Just slightly. Because as Naomi struggled, the collar of her uniform shifted. A silver necklace slipped into view. Old. Scratched. Hanging from a worn chain. Malcolm stared at it instantly. His face changed for half a second. The symbol on the pendant looked painfully familiar. Vanessa noticed his reaction immediately. Her smile disappeared. "Take her outside now," she ordered quickly. The guards dragged Naomi across the ballroom floor while guests whispered around her like vultures. Naomi's bag ripped open near the mansion doors. Papers scattered everywhere. Hospital receipts. Old photographs. Prescription slips. One faded picture slid directly toward Malcolm's polished shoes. He bent slightly. In the photo was a younger woman standing beside an older man Malcolm recognized immediately. His late father. The room suddenly felt colder. Naomi saw the picture too late. Panic crossed her face. "No, please give that back." Before Malcolm could speak, Naomi's cracked phone suddenly rang on the marble floor. The caller ID flashed brightly in the silent ballroom. St. Mary Hospital. Naomi answered with shaking hands. Then everyone heard the voice screaming through the speaker. "Miss Carter, your mother keeps asking for Mr. Hayes. She keeps saying the Hayes family took her child." The entire room froze. And Malcolm Hayes slowly looked up at Naomi for the first time with real shock in his eyes. The ballroom stayed silent after the hospital call ended. Naomi Carter stood frozen near the mansion doors, breathing hard, her deep brown face wet with tears and humiliation. The ripped contents of her old bag still covered the marble floor. Medicine receipts. Bus tickets. A faded photograph. Malcolm Hayes slowly bent down and picked up the old picture again. His expensive watch reflected against the cracked surface of the photo. Vanessa Whitmore stepped forward immediately. "Malcolm, this girl is manipulating everyone." Her voice came too fast. Too sharp. Malcolm did not answer her right away. His eyes stayed on the photograph. The older man beside Naomi's mother was his father. Younger. Smiling. And around the woman's neck was the exact same silver pendant Naomi wore tonight. A strange silence spread through the ballroom. Naomi reached for the picture with shaking fingers. "Please, give it back." Malcolm looked at her carefully now. Not like a servant. Not like dirt. Like a question he could not solve. "What is your mother's name?" he asked quietly. Vanessa stiffened instantly. Naomi hesitated. Fear crossed her face. "Lillian Carter." Malcolm's jaw tightened slightly. Vanessa laughed too quickly. There are thousands of women named Lillian. But Malcolm was already noticing details nobody else saw. Naomi's necklace. The photograph. The panic in Vanessa's eyes. The hospital mentioning his family by name. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. One of the older guests whispered softly, "Why does the girl look like the Hayes family?" Vanessa turned immediately. Enough. She faced the crowd with a cold smile. This is exactly what happens when desperate people enter places above their class. Naomi lowered her eyes again. Shame burned through her chest. She could still feel the sting of Malcolm's slap on her face. But even now, she did not scream at him. She only held her torn bag tighter. "I only wanted to work," she whispered. Malcolm looked at her bruised dignity for a long moment. Then he surprised everyone. "Release her." The guard slowly stepped back. Tiny hope. Small. Fragile. Naomi looked shocked. Vanessa looked furious. "Malcolm," she hissed quietly, "do not embarrass yourself over a liar." Malcolm ignored her. "Your mother is at St. Mary Hospital." Naomi nodded carefully. "She needs surgery." "Why did she ask for my family?" Naomi swallowed hard. "I do not know." But her voice trembled too much. Like she knew more than she wanted to say. A little boy carrying empty glasses suddenly spoke from the edge of the room. She was crying about that necklace earlier. The ballroom turned toward him instantly. She said her mama told her never to lose it. Naomi's eyes widened in panic. Marcus, stop talking. Vanessa stepped closer fast. Children imagine stories. But Malcolm's eyes stayed locked on the necklace now. The symbol carved into the silver pendant belonged to the Hayes Foundation. A symbol removed from public use almost 25 years ago. His late father designed it himself. Malcolm spoke carefully. Where did you get that necklace? Naomi stepped back instinctively. It belonged to my mother. And before her? Naomi hesitated. Silence. The rich guests watched like hungry wolves waiting for another humiliation. If you are listening right now, comment where you are watching from, and tell me honestly, do you think Naomi is telling the truth? Vanessa folded her arms tightly. This is ridiculous. She probably stole it. Naomi's voice cracked instantly. No. The room fell silent again. My mother told me never to let anyone take it, Naomi whispered. She said it belonged to the family that destroyed her life. Malcolm's expression changed. Very slightly. But Vanessa saw it. Fear flickered behind her perfect smile for the first time tonight. Then came the obstacle. A security manager hurried into the ballroom holding a tablet. Sir, we checked the hallway camera. Malcolm turned immediately. And? The man hesitated. The footage is missing. Vanessa exhaled softly in relief. Naomi's shoulders dropped. Tiny hope destroyed again. Malcolm took the tablet slowly. Missing? Only the part before Miss Whitmore's dress was stained. Vanessa crossed her arms again. There. Proof she is lying. But Malcolm was no longer looking at Vanessa. He was staring at Naomi's necklace like it was pulling him toward an old memory he buried years ago. Then Naomi's phone rang again. This time her hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. St. Mary Hospital. Naomi answered instantly. A week older woman cried through the speaker. Naomi, do not trust the woman near Mr. Hayes. Vanessa's face turned pale. And Malcolm slowly looked toward her for the first time with suspicion in his eyes. Vanessa Whitmore's face lost color for one dangerous second after Lillian Carter warned Naomi through the phone. Do not trust the woman near Mr. Hayes. The ballroom stayed frozen. Malcolm Hayes slowly turned toward Vanessa, his sharp eyes colder now. Vanessa recovered quickly. Too quickly. This is insane, she snapped. A sick old woman says one strange thing and suddenly everyone forgets this girl ruined my event. Naomi stood there trembling, still clutching her cracked phone. She looked small beneath the crystal chandeliers. Weak. Exhausted. Her cheek still red from the slap. But even now, she protected the phone carefully like it carried the last fragile piece of her family. Malcolm looked back at Naomi. Take me to your mother. Vanessa stepped forward instantly. Malcolm, do not be ridiculous. Enough, he said quietly. That silence hit harder than shouting. Naomi lowered her eyes. Sir. I do not need trouble. I only need to get back to the hospital. Her voice cracked on the last word. One of the guests whispered, she looks terrified. Another answered, poor people learn how to act. The humiliation did not stop. It only changed shape. 20 minutes later, Naomi sat alone on a crowded city bus heading toward St. Mary Hospital. Her torn bag rested on her lap. Rain hit the windows softly. Her catering uniform still smelled like spilled wine and expensive perfume. Across from her, a little girl stared at the red mark on Naomi's face. Naomi looked away quickly. Downtown lights faded into broken sidewalks, old apartment buildings, and flickering street signs. The rich world disappeared behind her. Reality returned. Cold. Hungry. Tired. At the hospital, fluorescent lights buzzed above cracked floors. Naomi rushed into her mother's room carrying a small paper bag of discounted medicine she barely managed to buy. Lillian Carter looked thinner tonight. Older. Oxygen tubes. Weak hands. Endless coughing. Naomi forced a smile anyway. Mama. I am here. Lillian touched Naomi's bruised cheek immediately. Her eyes filled with pain. Who hurt you? Naomi shook her head fast. It does not matter. It matters to me. Naomi sat beside the bed and opened another overdue hospital bill. Final notice stamped across the page in red letters. Her hands shook. I will find the money, she whispered. I promised you. Lillian closed her eyes slowly. You already sacrificed too much. Naomi swallowed hard. I cannot lose you too. Silence filled the tiny room. Outside the door, another patient cried somewhere down the hallway. A nurse quietly taped a new payment warning onto Naomi's door. Human pain lived everywhere in this building. Meanwhile, miles away, Malcolm Hayes sat alone inside the back seat of a black luxury car. Rain slid across the windows while he stared at the old photograph again. His assistant Daniel sat across from him holding a tablet. We searched the Hayes Foundation archives, Daniel said carefully. The pendant symbol disappeared 24 years ago after your father shut down one of the family programs. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. Which program? Daniel hesitated. A shelter for abandoned women and children. Malcolm looked back at Naomi's mother in the photograph. Something inside him shifted uneasily. Back at the hospital, Naomi opened her old bag again searching for clean clothes. Instead, another hidden item slipped out. A sealed yellow envelope. Old. Folded. Her mother grabbed Naomi's wrist instantly. Fear crossed Lillian's face. Do not open that yet. Naomi stared at her. Mama, what is this? Lillian started coughing hard before she could answer. Tiny hope vanished again. A doctor entered moments later with another problem. Miss Carter, he said softly, the payment deadline changed. Your mother needs surgery by tomorrow morning. Naomi's face went pale. Tomorrow. Or we cannot continue treatment. Naomi looked down at the unpaid bills covering the bed. Her old shoes. Her torn uniform. Her empty wallet. Everything felt impossible. Then her cracked phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Naomi answered carefully. A deep male voice spoke quietly. Miss Carter. Mr. Hayes wants to see the necklace again. Naomi froze. Why? Silence. Then the man answered softly. Because someone inside the Hayes family may already know who you are. Naomi slowly looked toward the yellow envelope in her trembling hands. And outside the hospital room door, unseen by Naomi, Vanessa Whitmore stood listening in silence. Vanessa Whitmore's smile disappeared the second she heard the unknown number on Naomi Carter's phone mention the Hayes family. She stepped away from the hospital door slowly, but panic had already entered her eyes. Inside the room, Naomi still stood frozen beside her mother's bed. Someone inside the Hayes family may already know who you are. The sentence echoed in her mind again and again. Naomi gripped the yellow envelope tighter. I do not understand, she whispered. Why would a billionaire care about me? Lillian Carter looked terrified now. Weak. Pale. Breathing harder through the oxygen tubes. Naomi, she said softly, if Malcolm Hayes asks questions, do not tell Vanessa anything. Naomi stared at her mother in confusion. Mama, who is Vanessa really? Before Lillian could answer, violent coughing interrupted her again. The nurse rushed inside. Machines beeped faster. Naomi immediately forgot the mystery and held her mother's trembling hand. "Please breathe," she cried softly. "Please do not leave me." Across the city, Malcolm Hayes sat inside his private office high above Atlanta. Rain hit the glass walls while old files covered the massive wooden desk in front of him. Daniel placed another folder beside the photograph Malcolm had been staring at all night. "We recovered part of the shelter records," Daniel said carefully. "But several pages are missing." Malcolm opened the file slowly. His eyes stopped immediately on one detail. A younger Lillian Carter standing beside a little girl wearing the same silver pendant Naomi carried today. Malcolm leaned back silently. "Who removed these pages?" Daniel hesitated. "The records disappeared shortly after Vanessa Whitmore's father joined the Hayes Foundation board 20 years ago." Silence filled the office. Malcolm's jaw tightened slightly. "Find every surviving employee from that shelter." Meanwhile, downstairs in the hospital billing office, Naomi begged for more time. "Please," she whispered to the administrator. "My mother only needs one more surgery." The woman behind the desk barely looked up. "Without payment, treatment cannot continue tomorrow." Naomi lowered her head slowly. Humiliation followed her everywhere now. Rich people ignored her. Strangers judged her. Even hospitals measured human life with paperwork. Outside the office, Vanessa appeared suddenly beside Naomi like a shadow. Elegant coat. Perfect makeup. Cold eyes. "You should stop chasing fantasies," Vanessa said quietly. Naomi stiffened immediately. "I never asked for anything from Mr. Hayes." Vanessa stepped closer. "Good. Because girls like you destroy families when they smell money." Naomi's eyes filled instantly, but she refused to cry in front of her. "You slapped me before hundreds of people," Naomi whispered. "What else do you want from me?" Vanessa smiled faintly. "For you to disappear." That silence hurt more than shouting. Naomi walked away quickly before Vanessa could see her shaking hands. But hidden inside Vanessa's purse, her phone screen still showed an old scanned document. One name circled in red ink. Naomi Carter. Back upstairs, Lillian finally opened her eyes again. Weak tears rolled down her cheeks. Naomi sat beside her quietly, exhausted beyond words. Then Lillian slowly pointed toward the yellow envelope still resting on the bed. "Open it," she whispered. Naomi carefully unfolded the brittle paper inside. An old photograph slipped out first. A younger Malcolm Hayes stood beside his late father at a charity event. And in the corner of the picture, barely visible, stood Lillian holding a little girl. Naomi. Her hand started shaking instantly. "Mama," Lillian closed her eyes painfully. "Your father wanted to come back for us." Naomi froze. "What?" Before another word could be spoken, someone knocked softly at the hospital door. Daniel entered carefully holding a black umbrella dripping with rainwater. "Miss Carter," he said gently, "Mr. Hayes would like to ask you a few questions privately." Tiny hope flickered across Naomi's face for the first time. Maybe someone finally believed her. Maybe the nightmare would end. But the moment she stood up, Vanessa suddenly appeared behind Daniel in the hallway. Watching. Listening. Calculating. And inside Malcolm's office at Hayes Corporation, another discovery appeared on the security screen. Old camera footage from the gala had finally been partially restored. The video stopped exactly 1 second before Vanessa slapped Naomi. But reflected faintly in a silver serving tray beside Naomi. Malcolm noticed something impossible. The pendant around Naomi's neck carried the exact same family crest hidden inside the sealed Hayes inheritance archives. Malcolm slowly stood up from his chair. His face turned cold. "Daniel," he said quietly into the phone, "do not let Vanessa Whitmore near that girl again." Then the screen flickered one more time. And hidden in the reflection behind Vanessa, stood a man Malcolm had not seen in over 20 years. Malcolm Hayes did not move for several seconds after seeing the man hidden in the reflection behind Vanessa. Rain still hit the glass walls of his office, but now the silence felt dangerous. Daniel stared at the paused footage carefully. "That man," he whispered, "worked at the shelter 20 years ago." Malcolm's eyes darkened. "And Vanessa knows him." Across town, Naomi Carter followed Daniel through the quiet hospital corridor with shaking hands. She still held the old photograph against her chest. "Why does Mr. Hayes want to help me?" she asked softly. Daniel hesitated before answering. "Because something about your story does not make sense." But before they reached the private elevator, Vanessa suddenly appeared again. Perfect smile. Cold eyes. Expensive heels clicking across the floor. "Naomi cannot go anywhere," she said sharply. "The hospital administrator already called security." Naomi froze instantly. 2 guards approached from behind. The billing manager held a document in trembling hands. "Miss Carter," he announced loudly, "you are accused of stealing medication from this hospital." The entire hallway fell silent. Nurses turned around. Visitors stopped walking. Phones lifted slowly into the air. Naomi's face lost all color. "No," she whispered immediately. "I did not steal anything." Vanessa crossed her arms calmly. "Then why was medication found inside your locker?" Another wave of whispers spread through the hallway. "Poor people always lie." She wanted sympathy money. "I knew something was wrong with her." Naomi looked completely shattered now. "Please," she begged softly. "I would never do that." The guard stepped closer. "You need to come with us." Naomi's knees almost gave out. "My mother needs surgery tomorrow," she cried. "Please do not do this." But humiliation only grew worse. A nurse placed a small plastic bag on the counter. Inside it sat hospital medication with Naomi's employee tag beside it. Vanessa lowered her voice dramatically. "I tried to defend you." Naomi stared at her in disbelief. "You put that there." Vanessa smiled faintly. "Can you prove it?" Daniel immediately stepped forward. This accusation appeared very quickly. Vanessa turned toward him sharply. "Are you questioning hospital security now?" Another silence hit the corridor. Naomi looked around desperately. Nobody defended her. Nobody moved. Even the nurses avoided eye contact. Social pressure crushed her from every direction. Rich people whispered. Security blocked the exits. Cameras recorded her tears like entertainment. "Please," Naomi whispered again. "I only wanted to save my mother." One old janitor near the hallway slowly shook his head. He looked uncomfortable. Like he knew something. But fear kept him silent. Malcolm arrived seconds later. The elevator doors opened quietly behind everyone. His expensive black coat still carried drops of rainwater. The entire hallway straightened immediately. Vanessa relaxed slightly the moment she saw him. "Malcolm," she said carefully, "I handled the situation already." But Malcolm did not look at her first. He looked directly at Naomi. Her faded uniform. Her trembling hands. The tears she kept trying to hide. Then his eyes moved toward the plastic evidence bag. "Who searched her locker?" he asked coldly. Nobody answered immediately. Vanessa forced a smile. Security followed protocol. Malcolm picked up the evidence bag slowly. Then he noticed something strange. Naomi's employee tag inside the bag carried fresh ink stains. Too fresh. Like it had been printed recently. His eyes narrowed slightly. Tiny hope entered the room for 1 second. "Interesting," Malcolm murmured. Vanessa's face changed instantly. "You think I would frame her?" she snapped. Malcolm stayed calm. I think someone is afraid. Naomi looked at him silently. For the first time since this nightmare began, someone powerful sounded uncertain about Vanessa. But the hope died quickly. The hospital director suddenly rushed into the hallway holding another paper. "Mr. Hayes," he said nervously, "there is more." He handed Malcolm a formal complaint accusing Naomi of blackmailing wealthy guests at the gala. Naomi stared at the document in horror. "That is not true." Vanessa stepped closer dramatically. "How many lies will you tell before people stop believing you?" Even Malcolm's expression hardened again. Too many accusations. Too little proof. Naomi felt the floor collapsing beneath her. Upstairs, Lillian Carter's coughing worsened again. The nurse quietly informed Naomi that surgery might be cancelled if payment did not arrive tonight. Naomi broke down completely then. "Please," she cried through tears. "You are destroying my mother's life." Vanessa leaned closer and whispered coldly enough that only Naomi could hear. "Leave this city before sunrise, or your mother loses everything." Naomi's breathing shook violently. Daniel watched Vanessa carefully now. Suspicion was growing. But still not enough. Then suddenly, the old janitor from earlier slipped a folded paper into Naomi's hand while security looked away. "Do not trust the hospital records," he whispered quickly. "The real footage still exists." Naomi looked down in confusion. Her eyes widened immediately. Written across the paper was a storage room number, and beneath it, one sentence. "Ask who deleted the original camera file the night of the gala." At the exact same moment, Malcolm's phone vibrated in his pocket. A message from his private investigator appeared on the screen beside an old scanned document. The Carter shelter records were altered 20 years ago. Original birth name recovered. Malcolm stopped breathing for 1 second as he read the final line. Naomi Carter was not her real name. Naomi Carter stopped breathing for 1 second after hearing Daniel read the message on Malcolm Hayes's phone. Naomi Carter was not her real name. The hospital hallway suddenly felt smaller. Colder. Dangerous. Vanessa Whitmore saw Malcolm's expression change immediately, and fear flashed across her face before she hid it again. "What is that supposed to mean?" she asked sharply. Malcolm did not answer her. His eyes stayed locked on the old scanned document glowing on the screen. Daniel stepped closer quietly. "The original shelter file was altered 20 years ago," he said. "Someone replaced the child's identity." Naomi shook her head slowly. "No, my mother would never lie to me." But even as she spoke, her trembling fingers tightened around the silver pendant hanging from her neck. Malcolm noticed instantly. The family crest engraved into the metal matched the hidden Hayes archive seal exactly. Silence swallowed the hallway. Even the nurses stopped moving. "Where did you get that pendant?" Malcolm asked carefully. Naomi looked confused now. "My mother gave it to me when I was little." Vanessa interrupted immediately. "That proves nothing." Her voice came too quickly. Too sharply. Malcolm turned slowly toward her. "Then why are you nervous?" Vanessa crossed her arms tightly. "I am tired of this girl manipulating everyone." But Daniel was already opening another recovered file from the investigator. Inside sat a faded photograph from the Hayes Foundation charity shelter 20 years earlier. Malcolm stared at the image silently. Little Naomi stood beside Lillian Carter wearing the exact same pendant. And behind them, Vanessa's father stood near the shelter office holding paperwork. "Impossible," Malcolm whispered. Naomi looked terrified now. "Please stop looking at me like that," she said softly. "I do not understand any of this." Then another emotional spike hit. The old janitor from the hospital suddenly appeared again near the hallway entrance. Nervous. Sweating. Looking over his shoulder repeatedly. "I found the original camera backup," he whispered quickly. Vanessa's entire body stiffened. "What did you say?" The janitor held up a small flash drive with shaking hands. The gala footage was edited after the slap. Every sound in the hallway disappeared. Malcolm stepped forward immediately. Daniel plugged the drive into a hospital computer while everyone watched in silence. The screen flickered once. Then the restored footage finally appeared. Naomi stood quietly carrying drinks through the gala crowd. Vanessa walked directly toward her. But this time the missing seconds remained visible. Vanessa deliberately bumped into Naomi first. She knocked the tray from Naomi's hands herself. Then she slapped Naomi before Naomi even spoke a word. Gasps filled the hallway instantly. One nurse covered her mouth. Another lowered her phone slowly in shame. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, people looked at her differently. She never touched Vanessa, the janitor whispered. Malcolm's face hardened completely. Vanessa panicked immediately. That video is fake. Daniel shook his head. The metadata confirms it was edited inside the hospital security system. Vanessa turned pale. The first real crack had appeared. If you are watching this story right now, comment what you think Vanessa is truly hiding, and why Naomi's real identity had to disappear 20 years ago. But the tiny hope lasted only seconds. The footage suddenly cut off again before the full confrontation ended. One final section remained corrupted. There is still missing footage, Daniel said quietly. Vanessa immediately regained part of her confidence. Then you still have no proof of anything important. Malcolm looked back at Naomi slowly. Proof enough to know someone framed you. Naomi lowered her eyes. Tears rolled silently down her face now. Not because she was safe. But because someone powerful finally believed her a little. Then another obstacle arrived immediately. Hospital administrators approached with legal papers already prepared. Miss Carter still faces theft allegations, one man announced coldly. Until the investigation is complete, she is suspended and banned from hospital property. Naomi's heart broke again instantly. My mother is upstairs, she whispered. Please, Vanessa seized control again. Rules are rules. Malcolm stepped between them quietly. No one touches her. The tension became unbearable. Then Daniel opened the investigator's final attachment. Another recovered document appeared on the screen. This one older. Torn. Water damaged. But one line remained clear enough to read. Original name, Naomi Hayes. Malcolm's hand tightened around the phone. Vanessa staggered backward slightly. Naomi stared blankly at the screen like her entire world had stopped moving. Hayes, she whispered weakly. Lillian Carter suddenly screamed from upstairs at the exact same moment. Do not let them take my daughter. Nurses rushed toward the elevator in panic. Malcolm looked up sharply. Then his phone rang again. The private investigator sounded terrified. Mr. Hayes, he said urgently, someone just broke into the shelter archives tonight. Malcolm's eyes turned cold instantly. Because now he understood one thing clearly. Someone was still trying to erase Naomi Hayes forever. Malcolm Hayes ended the call slowly while the hospital alarm lights reflected across his face. Someone broke into the shelter archives tonight. Naomi's breathing became uneven immediately. She stood frozen beside the elevator doors, still holding the old pendant against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Upstairs, nurses rushed Lillian Carter toward another room while her weak voice echoed through the hallway. Protect my daughter. Vanessa Whitmore looked terrified for the first time. But she hid it behind anger. This is becoming ridiculous, she snapped. She is manipulating all of you. Malcolm turned toward her quietly. Enough. The single word silenced everyone. Then he looked back at Naomi. His voice softened slightly. Your mother needs treatment now. Naomi lowered her eyes quickly. I cannot pay any more. Her voice cracked on the last word. Malcolm noticed immediately. So did Daniel. The nurse standing nearby looked uncomfortable holding the unpaid hospital balance papers in her hand. Malcolm took the folder without another word. He signed it calmly. Continue her treatment. Naomi looked up instantly. Shock. Fear. Confusion. Why would you help me? She whispered. Malcolm paused before answering. Because someone tried too hard to destroy your life. Silence filled the hallway again. Vanessa clenched her jaw so tightly her hands trembled. You are making a mistake, Malcolm. He did not even look at her. Maybe the mistake was made 20 years ago. Emotional tension spread through the hospital corridor like cold smoke. Wealthy board members stood near the private wing doors watching quietly in expensive suits while Naomi stood in her faded cleaning uniform with wet eyes and shaking hands. The contrast felt painful. One world smelled like power and polished marble. The other smelled like medicine, fear, and exhaustion. Then another small moment changed everything. Naomi suddenly lost balance from exhaustion after hours without food. Malcolm moved instinctively. His hand reached out before she hit the floor. But he stopped just before fully touching her arm, almost like the moment carried some old memory he could not explain. Naomi stared at him nervously. I am fine, she said quickly. You do not have to pretend to care. Malcolm's eyes narrowed slightly. Who taught you that accepting help is weakness? Naomi looked away immediately. Life did. The words hit him harder than expected. Daniel quietly noticed Malcolm staring again at the small birthmark near Naomi's wrist. The exact crescent-shaped mark from the old Hayes family photo. Tiny Hope entered the room softly. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just human. Malcolm asked the nurse one short question. Can her mother stay here tonight? The nurse nodded carefully. If the payments continue. Naomi's eyes filled with tears again. She looked embarrassed by them. Thank you, she whispered weakly. Vanessa stepped closer immediately, trying to poison the moment. She thanks people very easily for someone accused of theft. Naomi flinched like she had been slapped again. Malcolm's voice turned cold. No one proved she stole anything. Vanessa forced a smile for the watching staff. Not yet. Daniel interrupted quietly. The edited footage already proves someone lied. Vanessa's face darkened instantly. Emotional spikes kept crashing one after another. Outside the hospital window, black luxury cars waited under heavy rain while Naomi sat beside her mother's bed holding an old plastic bag containing all her belongings. Inside that bag rested the faded photograph from the shelter. Malcolm noticed it when she accidentally dropped the bag beside the chair. The photo slid halfway out. A little girl. Lillian Carter. And a man whose face had been torn away from the picture deliberately. Malcolm picked it up carefully. Who removed this? Naomi shook her head slowly. My mother never told me. Then Lillian suddenly woke again weakly from the bed. Her tired eyes locked directly onto Malcolm. Fear crossed her face instantly. You, she whispered painfully. Malcolm stepped closer. Do you know me? Lillian grabbed Naomi's hand tightly. Do not let them separate you again. Naomi looked confused. Mama, what are you talking about? But Lillian started coughing violently before she could answer. Nurses rushed in immediately. Another obstacle. Another interruption. Vanessa watched from outside the room with growing panic. She immediately pulled out her phone and whispered sharply to someone. He is getting too close. Find the missing archive before he does. Meanwhile Malcolm stood silently near the hospital doorway staring at the torn photograph still in his hand. Then Naomi spoke softly without looking at him. My mother used to tell me one thing every night. Malcolm looked up slowly. Naomi's voice trembled. She said, "One day a man named Hayes would finally come back for me." Malcolm froze completely. Because those were the exact same words his dying mother whispered to him 20 years earlier. Malcolm Hayes froze beside the hospital bed while Naomi's trembling voice echoed through the room. "My mother said a man named Hayes would come back for me." Silence swallowed everything after that. The heart monitor beeped softly beside Lillian Carter while rain struck the hospital windows outside. Malcolm slowly looked down at the torn photograph again. His fingers tightened around the missing half of the image. Daniel noticed immediately. "Sir." Malcolm did not answer right away. His eyes stayed locked on Naomi. Deep shock. Controlled pain. Old memory. "Who told your mother to say that?" he finally asked quietly. Naomi shook her head. "She never explained. She only cried whenever I asked." Lillian suddenly grabbed Malcolm's sleeve weakly from the bed. Her breathing became uneven again. "You promised." She whispered painfully. Vanessa Whitmore stiffened near the doorway. Fear crossed her face for one dangerous second before disappearing again. "This woman is confused from medication," Vanessa interrupted sharply. "She does not even know what she is saying." But Malcolm did not look away from Lillian. "What promise?" Lillian's tired eyes filled with tears instantly. "The night they took the baby," Naomi stepped backward in confusion. "What baby?" Nobody answered immediately. Emotional silence spread through the room again. The wealthy hospital donors outside the glass corridor slowly stopped whispering. Nurses pretended not to listen while secretly staring toward the room. Past and present suddenly felt trapped together inside that small hospital space. Daniel quietly opened the old archive file he recovered earlier from the shelter storage. Inside rested a yellowed intake document from 22 years ago. One line had been crossed out heavily with black ink. "Child transferred under Hayes' family request." Naomi stared at the paper without understanding. Malcolm's breathing slowed dangerously. "Who authorized this?" Daniel swallowed hard. "The signature page is missing." Vanessa stepped closer immediately. "Old papers prove nothing." But then Lillian started crying softly from the hospital bed. "They told me she would have a better life." Naomi looked shattered. "Mama, what are they talking about?" Lillian closed her eyes tightly like the memory physically hurt her. "You were only a baby." Tiny pieces of the wound finally opened. Not the full truth. Just enough to break the silence that had lasted decades. Malcolm slowly sat down beside the bed, still controlled but visibly shaken underneath. "Was Naomi taken from someone?" he asked quietly. Vanessa snapped instantly. "Enough. This poor girl is trying to force herself into this family." Naomi flinched at the words again. "I never asked for any of this," she whispered. Her voice cracked from exhaustion and fear. "I only wanted my mother to live." Malcolm looked at her for a long moment. Then his eyes moved slowly toward the crescent birthmark near her wrist again. The same mark from the old Hayes family portrait hidden inside his private study for years. Emotional contrast hit harder now. Malcolm's expensive black suit. Naomi's worn cleaning uniform. Private hospital floors. Unpaid medicine bills. Old promises buried under wealth and power. Daniel quietly placed another object onto the table. A faded letter sealed inside plastic protection. "We found this hidden behind the shelter records." Vanessa's face drained instantly. Malcolm opened it carefully. Most of the writing had faded with time, but one sentence remained clear. "If anything happens to me, tell Malcolm Hayes the child survived." Naomi's knees almost gave out. "What child?" she whispered again. Tiny hope entered the room painfully. Naomi was not crazy. Something terrible had truly been hidden from her entire life. But another obstacle came immediately. Vanessa suddenly stepped forward and grabbed the letter from Malcolm's hands. This is fake. Her voice sounded desperate now. Someone is manipulating old documents. Daniel spoke carefully. The paper is authentic. Vanessa glared at him instantly. Be quiet. Then another emotional spike crashed into the room. Lillian suddenly panicked while staring toward the doorway. Do not let her near Naomi, she cried weakly. She already destroyed one family. Everyone turned slowly toward Vanessa. Even Malcolm. Vanessa's breathing became uneven. You are all insane. But Malcolm's face had completely changed now. Calm. Cold. Dangerous. What happened 22 years ago? He asked quietly. Lillian started trembling violently. Your mother wanted to protect the child, but someone inside the mansion betrayed her. Naomi covered her mouth in shock. Malcolm's eyes darkened immediately. Who? Before Lillian could answer, the hospital lights flickered suddenly. Daniel's phone rang at the exact same moment. His face lost color after reading the message. Sir, he whispered carefully. The missing archive footage just uploaded itself from a hidden backup server. Vanessa slowly stepped backward toward the door. Panic finally breaking through her mask. Then Daniel spoke the sentence that made the entire room freeze. And the person who deleted the original files still lives inside the Hayes mansion. Daniel slowly lowered the phone while the hidden footage finished uploading. Nobody inside the hospital room moved. Rain still hammered the windows outside, but the silence inside felt heavier now. Malcolm Hayes stood frozen beside Naomi Carter while Vanessa Whitmore quietly stepped backward toward the door. Fear had finally entered her eyes completely. Who deleted the files? Malcolm asked calmly. Too calmly. Daniel swallowed hard. The system traces point back to the Hayes Mansion private archive. Vanessa immediately laughed sharply. So now old corrupted files are suddenly evidence. Her voice sounded controlled again, but her hands trembled slightly beside her designer purse. Naomi noticed it instantly. Tiny detail. Tiny crack. You are scared, Naomi whispered weakly. Vanessa turned toward her with cold fury. You should be careful what you accuse wealthy people of. Lillian started coughing painfully again from the hospital bed. Nurses rushed toward her while security entered the hallway outside. Social pressure returned immediately. Rich donors whispered. Hospital staff stared. Phones slowly lifted again. Malcolm looked toward Daniel. Move Naomi somewhere safe. Vanessa interrupted instantly. Absolutely not. Her voice echoed through the room. If she leaves now, it will look like an admission of guilt. Naomi looked confused. Guilt for what? Vanessa stepped closer slowly. For manipulating an old woman and trying to force your way into a family that does not belong to you. Emotional spike hit immediately. Naomi's eyes filled with tears again, but she refused to look down this time. I never asked for your money, she whispered painfully. I only wanted my mother treated like a human being. But Vanessa had already started building her trap. 2 hours later, Naomi was summoned to the Hayes Foundation charity gala inside the mansion ballroom. Crystal chandeliers glowed above hundreds of wealthy guests dressed in diamonds and silk. Naomi arrived wearing the same faded cleaning uniform beneath an old coat. Every eye turned toward her immediately. The contrast was brutal. Rich laughter. Expensive perfume. Silver trays. Naomi's worn shoes against polished marble floors. Malcolm had not arrived yet. Vanessa controlled the room completely. Ladies and gentlemen, Vanessa announced with fake sadness, this girl has been spreading dangerous lies against our family. Gasps spread softly across the ballroom. Naomi froze near the entrance. That is not true. Vanessa lifted several papers dramatically. She forged old documents and manipulated a sick woman for attention. Phones lifted instantly. Whispers exploded around the room. Poor people always want money. She planned this. Look at her clothes. Naomi's breathing became uneven. The humiliation felt even worse than before because now the entire elite social circle watched her suffer publicly. A lawyer stepped beside Vanessa carrying another folder. "Miss Carter," he said coldly, "if you sign this statement admitting fraud, the Hayes family will not press charges." Naomi stared at the paper with trembling hands. Admission of deception. Agreement never to contact the Hayes family again. Her knees almost gave out. "I did not lie," she whispered. Vanessa leaned closer. "Then your mother loses her hospital support tonight." Naomi looked shattered instantly. Emotional trap complete. Around them, guests pretended not to stare while secretly filming everything. Security guards quietly blocked the exits. Nobody stepped forward to help her. Tiny hope appeared for one brief second when Daniel suddenly entered the ballroom. His eyes immediately moved toward the fake confession papers. "Sir, ask nobody to pressure her," he warned carefully. Vanessa smiled calmly. "This is a private family matter." Daniel noticed something else immediately. The signature date on the document was wrong. Tiny clue. Tiny crack in the trap. Naomi also realized something strange. One page inside Vanessa's folder partially revealed the old archive seal from the hospital records. Vanessa had hidden the original files herself. "Why do you have those documents?" Naomi asked softly. Vanessa's expression changed for one dangerous second. "You should sign." Then another obstacle crashed down instantly. One wealthy board member stood up publicly. "If the accusations are true, the foundation reputation will be destroyed." More whispers spread. More phones lifted. Vanessa immediately used the pressure. "Exactly. This girl already caused enough damage." Naomi's hands shook violently. Tears rolled silently down her face now. "Please," she whispered. "My mother did nothing wrong." But the crowd had already chosen sides again. Wealth. Power. Reputation. Truth sounded too small inside that ballroom. Then another emotional spike hit. A little boy standing near the dessert table suddenly pointed toward Vanessa's folder innocently. "That is the same paper the angry lady hid yesterday." Silence cracked across the room instantly. Vanessa snapped toward him. "Be quiet." Daniel's eyes narrowed immediately. Naomi slowly stepped backward again, crushed under the pressure. Security moved closer. The lawyer held out the pen once more. "Sign it now." Naomi looked around the ballroom helplessly. Nobody defended her. Nobody believed her. Even Lillian's nurse stood crying quietly near the back wall. Vanessa finally smiled like victory belonged to her again. "This ends tonight." Naomi slowly reached for the pen with shaking fingers. Then the massive ballroom doors suddenly opened behind her. Every head turned immediately. Malcolm Hayes stepped inside wearing a black suit, calm and unreadable. Daniel exhaled sharply in relief. Behind Malcolm, two technicians rolled in a large monitor screen connected to an archive server. Vanessa's smile froze completely. And in Malcolm's hand rested the final hospital file stamped with Naomi Carter's real birth name. The ballroom doors remained open behind Malcolm Hayes while silence swallowed the entire gala. Naomi Carter still stood near the center of the marble floor holding the unsigned confession paper with trembling fingers. The giant monitor screen behind Malcolm glowed dark blue, waiting. Every wealthy guest slowly turned away from Vanessa Whitmore and toward Malcolm instead. Power in the room shifted quietly. Dangerously. Malcolm walked forward without rushing. Calm steps. Controlled face. Quiet authority. Daniel followed behind him carrying the sealed hospital archive box while two technicians connected cables to the screen. Vanessa forced herself to smile again, but her voice sounded thinner now. Malcolm, this girl manipulated everyone here. Malcolm stopped beside Naomi without looking at Vanessa first. His eyes moved toward Naomi's shaking hands instead. Put the pen down, he said softly. Naomi stared at him in disbelief. Sir. You will not sign anything tonight. Emotional silence hit the ballroom instantly. Naomi slowly lowered the pen while whispers spread through the crowd again. Some guests looked uncomfortable now. Others looked curious. Vanessa stepped forward sharply. You are embarrassing this family in public. Malcolm finally looked at her. Calm eyes. Cold eyes. The embarrassment started long before tonight. Tiny hope entered Naomi's face for the first time, but fear still held her body tense. She could feel hundreds of rich strangers watching her every breath. Her old shoes against polished marble. Her faded uniform beneath crystal lights. She still looked like she did not belong there. Vanessa noticed the shift immediately and attacked harder. Everyone here knows what this is, she announced loudly. A poor girl trying to steal sympathy from powerful people. Several wealthy guests nodded uncertainly. Phones remained raised. Social pressure thickened again. Naomi's eyes lowered in shame for one painful second. Then Malcolm calmly stepped closer beside her. Not touching her. Just standing there. Protecting space around her. Nobody speaks over her again, he said quietly. The ballroom fell silent immediately. Emotional spike. Vanessa laughed nervously. You are choosing a stranger over your own family. Daniel carefully placed the sealed archive box onto the long dining table in front of everyone. Beside it rested the faded photograph, the old hospital file, and the hidden letter recovered from the shelter. Objects from the past now sitting under chandelier light before the entire elite social circle. Tiny pieces of truth waiting to explode. Near the back of the ballroom, Lillian's nurse entered quietly pushing a wheelchair. Lillian Carter looked weak beneath a blanket, but alive enough to witness this night herself. Naomi gasped softly. Mama, Vanessa's face lost more color instantly. She should not be here. Malcolm answered calmly. Neither should Lies. Another emotional silence spread. One wealthy board member whispered, "What is happening?" Another guest slowly lowered his phone. The crowd no longer looked certain. Tension grew heavier with every second. Malcolm picked up the old hospital file but still did not open it. 22 years ago, he said slowly, someone inside this family erased a child from official records. Gasps spread quietly through the room. Vanessa immediately interrupted. Do not listen to conspiracy stories. Malcolm ignored her completely. His eyes moved toward Naomi again. Tell them why you came to this mansion that night. Naomi froze under hundreds of eyes. Shame hit her again instantly. I only came for medicine money, she whispered painfully. My mother was dying. Emotional contrast crushed the room. Wealth. Diamonds. Champagne. Against hospital debt and fear. One older woman in the crowd quietly wiped her eyes. Tiny hope grew slightly stronger. If you are listening right now, comment who you believe deserves justice in this room. And what you think Vanessa Whitmore is still hiding. But tension exploded again immediately afterward. Vanessa suddenly pointed toward Naomi. Ask her why the original footage disappeared after she arrived. Several guests looked suspicious again instantly. Naomi stepped backward in panic. I did not touch anything. Vanessa moved closer aggressively. Then why does every disaster begin with you? Naomi looked cornered again. Security guards shifted near the exits. Lillian started coughing weakly behind the crowd. Daniel suddenly spoke carefully. The deleted footage came from inside the mansion archive system. Vanessa snapped toward him. Enough. Her voice cracked slightly now. Malcolm noticed it immediately. Another tiny crack. Another small lie slipping apart. Then the little boy from earlier slowly walked toward the table holding something in his small hands. A silver access card. I found this near the archive room yesterday, he said innocently. Vanessa froze completely. Daniel's eyes widened instantly. The access card belonged only to Senior Hayes family members. Public silence crashed down harder than before. Malcolm slowly picked up the card without speaking. Naomi stared at Vanessa in shock now. The crowd no longer whispered. They only watched. Waited. The giant monitor screen behind Malcolm flickered softly as the hidden archive footage finally loaded. Vanessa's breathing became uneven. Malcolm placed the final hospital file directly in front of her. Then he looked toward the technicians. Play the recording. The ballroom lights dimmed slowly. The first frozen image appeared on the screen. And just before the footage started moving, Malcolm's calm voice echoed through the silent mansion. Before you judge her, watch this. The frozen image on the mansion screen finally moved. Grainy security footage flickered across the ballroom wall while every guest stood motionless beneath the chandeliers. Naomi Carter slowly turned toward the screen with tears already building in her eyes. Malcolm Hayes remained beside her. Calm. Silent. Watching everything. The recording showed the exact moment from 3 nights earlier inside the Hayes mansion hallway. Naomi appeared carrying medicine bags and hospital papers against her chest. Her old uniform looked soaked from rain. Her hands shook even on camera. Several guests lowered their phones slowly. Then the footage showed Vanessa Whitmore stepping directly into Naomi's path. You should not even breathe the same air as this family, Vanessa's voice echoed through the speakers. Gasps spread instantly through the ballroom. Naomi closed her eyes in pain. The next clip appeared. Vanessa suddenly slapped Naomi across the face without warning. Sharp silence exploded across the room. Nobody moved. Nobody whispered now. Only the sound of Naomi stumbling backward played through the speakers. One woman near the front covered her mouth in shock. Malcolm's jaw tightened slightly for the first time all night. Vanessa panicked immediately. That footage is edited. Daniel calmly answered from beside the monitor. The original archive timestamp confirms authenticity. Another emotional spike hit. The crowd that once laughed at Naomi now stared directly at Vanessa instead. But Malcolm still said nothing. He allowed the truth to speak first. The footage continued. Naomi bent down trying to gather her dropped hospital papers while security guards surrounded her. Then the screen froze again on one detail. A silver necklace falling from Naomi's uniform collar. The exact same necklace resting moments earlier inside the archive box. Malcolm slowly lifted the old photograph beside it. The same necklace hung around the neck of a young woman standing beside Malcolm's late father 22 years ago. Silence swallowed the gala whole. That necklace belonged to Amelia Carter, Malcolm said quietly. Lillian began crying softly in her wheelchair. Vanessa stepped backward. No, that proves nothing. Daniel opened the hospital file carefully. Amelia Carter gave birth inside St. Gabriel Hospital 22 years ago. Another page turned. The child's records disappeared that same night. Naomi looked confused now. Hurt. Shaking. What does this have to do with me? Malcolm finally faced her directly. His voice lowered. Everything. Vanessa suddenly shouted louder. She is lying about her identity. But before she could continue, the little boy stepped forward again holding the missing page from the hospital file. Tiny trembling hands. Giant truth. I found this inside Miss Vanessa's office. Daniel took the paper carefully and handed it to Malcolm. Malcolm read it once. Then twice. His expression darkened. "Read it," several guests whispered nervously. Malcolm lifted the page slowly for the room to see. "Original birth registration," he announced. "Mother, Amelia Carter." Another pause. "Child, Naomi Hayes." The ballroom lost all sound. Phones lowered completely now. Rich guests stared at each other in disbelief. Naomi's knees nearly gave out beneath her. Lillian broke into tears openly. Vanessa's face turned pale as marble. Naomi whispered weakly, "Hayes." Malcolm nodded once. "You were never a stranger to this family." Emotional silence crushed the room again. Then Daniel displayed the final archive photograph beside Naomi's face on the giant screen. Same eyes. Same birthmark near the collarbone. Same necklace. The entire room could see it now. Public truth stood exposed under crystal lights. Vanessa tried one final lie. "Malcolm, listen to me, your father never knew about that child." But another voice interrupted from the back of the ballroom. The missing witness. Old housekeeper Miriam stepped forward slowly holding a faded envelope against her chest. "That is not true." Every head turned instantly. Miriam's hands trembled as she looked directly at Vanessa. "Your father knew," she whispered toward Malcolm. "He left a signed letter before he died." Malcolm took the envelope carefully. Vanessa suddenly looked terrified for the first time all night. Real fear. Real collapse. Malcolm opened the letter halfway. His eyes scanned the first lines silently. Then he looked back at Vanessa with quiet devastation in his face. "You hid her from this family for 22 years. Naomi stood frozen beside him. Tears rolled silently down her face now. Not from shame anymore. From understanding. From finally seeing why her mother spent a lifetime hiding. Miriam's voice shook again. Amelia was thrown out after refusing to abandon her child. The crowd stared at Vanessa in horror now. No whispers. No defense. Only judgment. Malcolm slowly folded the letter back together. Then he asked the one question that made Vanessa completely speechless. "How much of Naomi's life did you destroy just to protect your inheritance?" No answer came. Only silence. Heavy. Deadly. And inside Malcolm's hand rested the final letter proving the Hayes fortune, the family name, and the future of the entire mansion were about to change forever. Vanessa Whitmore stood alone beneath the ballroom lights while every eye in the mansion turned against her. Nobody whispered anymore. Nobody defended her. The same rich guests who once laughed at Naomi Carter now looked away in shame. Malcolm Hayes slowly lowered the letter written by his late father. Silence covered the entire room like heavy smoke. Vanessa forced out a weak laugh. "Malcolm, she is manipulating all of you." Nobody answered. Not even her own family. Lillian Hayes gripped the arm of her wheelchair tightly, tears falling down her face. "You destroyed that girl's life," she whispered. Vanessa turned desperate immediately. "I protected this family." Malcolm's voice cut through the ballroom quietly. "No. You protected yourself." Emotional silence crashed again. Naomi stood near the back of the room, still holding the old silver necklace against her chest. Her hands trembled badly. Not from fear anymore. From shock. From finally understanding why her mother died carrying so much pain. Daniel stepped forward with another folder in his hands. "The hospital board has confirmed the records were illegally altered 22 years ago." Guests gasped softly again. Vanessa shook her head wildly. "You cannot prove I changed them." Daniel calmly opened the final page. "The authorization signature matches your legal records." Phones lowered completely now. Even the security guards looked uncomfortable. Malcolm looked directly at Vanessa. Cold. Controlled. You stole her name. Vanessa's voice cracked for the first time. I did what I had to do. Naomi finally spoke softly through tears. My mother begged your family for help. The room froze again. Naomi swallowed hard before continuing. She died believing nobody would ever know the truth. Several women in the crowd wiped tears from their eyes quietly. One older guest lowered his head in shame. Vanessa suddenly pointed at Naomi again. She came here for money. But before another lie could spread, little Isaiah stepped forward clutching the copied hospital paper tightly. Miss Naomi cried when we had no food, he said innocently. She never asked for rich things. The emotional weight crushed the ballroom. Malcolm slowly walked toward Naomi. Calm authority. Quiet protection. Look at her, he told the room. She was humiliated in this mansion while carrying the name this family stole from her. Nobody could deny it now. The giant screen still displayed the side-by-side images. The necklace. The birthmark. The hospital seal. The truth stood in front of everyone. Vanessa tried one final defense. I kept the inheritance safe. Malcolm answered instantly. From a child. Sharp silence. Complete destruction. Lillian suddenly raised her trembling voice. Vanessa Whitmore, you are removed from every Hayes family trust effective tonight. Audible gasps spread across the ballroom. Vanessa looked stunned. You cannot do this to me. Daniel calmly stepped beside Malcolm. The family lawyers already can. Another emotional spike hit. Malcolm took the old necklace gently from Naomi's shaking hands. Then he placed it back around her neck himself. A symbolic return. A stolen identity finally restored. Naomi broke into quiet tears instantly. I never wanted revenge, she whispered. Malcolm looked at her carefully. You deserved dignity. The crowd that once watched Naomi beg now stood completely silent before her. One by one, guests lowered their eyes. Even the staff members looked emotional now. Vanessa glanced around desperately for support, but nobody moved toward her anymore. Not one person. The mansion had turned its back on her. Malcolm finally faced the ballroom publicly. Naomi Carter Hayes is recognized as part of this family from this moment forward. Shock spread across the room again. Then silence gave way to soft murmurs of disbelief. Naomi looked overwhelmed. Fragile. Exhausted. Human. Lillian opened her arms slowly from the wheelchair. Come here, child. Naomi hesitated for one painful second before stepping forward carefully. Lillian embraced her tightly while crying openly. The ballroom watched the reunion in complete silence. Emotional justice had finally arrived. Daniel handed Malcolm another envelope quietly. The inheritance correction papers, he said softly. Vanessa's face completely collapsed. Malcolm did not even look at her this time. You will answer legally for every falsified record. No screaming. No revenge. Just truth. Just consequence. Vanessa slowly sat down in defeat while the mansion moved on without her. Naomi stood frozen beside Lillian, still trying to breathe through years of pain breaking apart inside her chest. Malcolm looked at Naomi one final time before speaking gently. Your mother asked my father for one thing before she disappeared. Naomi looked up slowly. Malcolm's voice softened. She asked him to make sure you would one day come home. Then Malcolm placed the official Hayes family documents carefully into Naomi's trembling hands while the massive mansion doors opened slowly behind them beneath the warm golden lights. The massive mansion doors opened slowly while Naomi Carter Hayes stood frozen beneath the golden lights. The official Hayes family documents trembled inside her hands. For a long moment, she could not move. She had entered this mansion humiliated, slapped, and treated like dirt. Now the same doors opened for her like she truly belonged there. Malcolm Hayes stood quietly beside her. Calm. Protective. No cameras flashed now. No cruel whispers followed her anymore. Only silence filled with respect. "You are finally home," Malcolm said softly again. Naomi lowered her head as tears rolled down her face. Not tears of shame this time. Tears of relief. Lillian Hayes waited near the grand staircase with a warm blanket folded across her lap. Her voice trembled gently. "Come inside, child." Naomi stepped forward slowly. Every step felt unreal. The same marble floor where guests once laughed at her now echoed beneath soft silence. Isaiah ran ahead first, smiling for the first time in days. "We really get to stay here?" he asked innocently. Malcolm looked at him with quiet warmth. "As long as you want." Emotional release spread through the room. Even several house staff members wiped tears from their eyes quietly. Days later, the mansion no longer felt cold. Naomi's mother's photograph rested inside a silver frame near the fireplace beside the old necklace that once carried so much pain. Now it carried truth instead. The hidden name. The stolen identity. The promise finally fulfilled. Naomi touched the necklace gently one morning while sunlight entered through the tall windows. "Mama, they know the truth now," she whispered softly. Lillian arranged proper medical care immediately. The small hospital room where Naomi once begged for extra time was replaced with warm nurses, clean sheets, and peace. Isaiah received new school clothes and books. He laughed loudly while running through the mansion gardens. A sound Naomi had almost forgotten children could make. Malcolm never acted like a savior. That mattered most to Naomi. He gave her space. Respect. Dignity. He restored her position inside the family business quietly and legally through the lawyers. No grand speeches. No pity. Only fairness. One evening Naomi stood alone on the mansion balcony overlooking the city lights. Malcolm approached slowly beside her. "You do not have to prove your worth to this family anymore," he said gently. Naomi looked down for a moment. "I spent my whole life fighting just to survive." Malcolm answered calmly. "Now you can live." Silence settled softly between them. Healing silence. Not painful silence. Naomi smiled faintly for the first time. Small. Honest. Real. Vanessa Whitmore disappeared from the public eye after losing her position inside the Hayes Family Trust. Guests who once praised her stopped answering her calls. The same society that protected power turned away once truth arrived. But Naomi never celebrated Vanessa's fall. She simply walked forward. That was her victory. Weeks later, the Hayes family held a quiet dinner inside the mansion. No reporters. No cameras. Just family. Lillian placed the old hospital file gently into Naomi's hands across the table. "This belongs to you now," she whispered. Naomi stared at the papers silently before finally closing them. The file no longer felt like a wound. It felt like proof that her mother's suffering had not disappeared into darkness forever. Isaiah suddenly hugged Naomi tightly from behind. "Nobody will call us poor trash again," he said softly. Naomi's eyes filled immediately. Malcolm looked at the boy carefully. "No," he answered. "Because dignity was never about money." Emotional peace settled across the table. Warm food. Safe walls. Honest faces. Everything Naomi once thought belonged only to rich people now surrounded her without humiliation attached to it. Before the night ended, Naomi walked slowly toward the mansion entrance one last time. She looked back at the same ballroom where her life had shattered publicly days earlier. The chandeliers still glowed above the polished floor. But now she stood there differently. Not broken. Not invisible. Malcolm stepped beside her quietly. Naomi held the silver necklace once more before placing it carefully inside a glass memory case beside her mother's photograph. A painful secret had finally become a family truth. Isaiah smiled brightly nearby. "Good night, Miss Hayes," he teased playfully. Naomi laughed softly through tears. Lillian smiled warmly from the staircase. Malcolm simply watched Naomi with quiet respect. And for the first time in many years, Naomi Carter Hayes no longer looked afraid of tomorrow. Because the world may ignore the poor. Power may silence truth for a time. But hidden pain does not stay buried forever. Do not judge people by their clothes, their job, or their struggle. The cruel eventually face their own reflection. And one act of kindness, one hidden truth, and one brave heart can change an entire destiny.